One of the most essential aspects in any business is holding your staff or your team accountable. This is key for any business to not only be efficient, but to be sustainable. But how can anyone in your business be held accountable, though, if they aren't clear as to what the expectations are? The answer, of course, is they can't. Find out how to create a culture of accountability next on Peak Performers Podcast.
Welcome to this edition of Peak Performers Podcast with your host, Thor Conklin. Thor will be sharing the necessary tools, strategies, and psychology you'll need to become a peak performer in any area of your life or business.
Thor Conklin here. We give you the tricks, the tips, the tools, the strategy, the technology, and the psychology peak performers use in order to get more done and execute at the highest level. If you know what to do but struggle with getting it all done, or simply want to raise your game to the next level, this podcast is for you. Sit back and enjoy.
Today's guest is Mike Evans, accountability and corporate culture expert. Mike specializes in accelerating change, igniting leadership, and employee engagement within the corporate structure. If you're a business owner looking to optimize your business or an employee trying to climb your way up the corporate ladder, this interview is right up your alley.
Mike, thank you very much for joining us today. I know the audience is going to get so much out of today's episode. You know, I've been really looking forward to this. It's probably taken us, 4 months to get this thing going?
It has. Both of our schedules have been jam-packed.
I know, absolutely. And then we get it on the calendar, and then, one time I had eye surgery, another time something was going on with your computer, but we just kept going, and make sure that we execute it and got this thing done. And that's why I'm really excited about this, because execution is such a critical part of everything I do, everything that I teach, and I'm really looking forward, just for myself, to pick your brain and really find out some of the techniques and the strategies that you're using, the things that you see with your clients. And quite frankly, I'll just give you a little inside, scoop here. I'm looking forward to stealing some of your ideas. So just laying it out there.
I'm happy to share and let you steal. In fact, there is a very close relationship between execution and accountability. When it comes to execution, if you want to do that flawlessly, and you need to maintain a highly accountable mindset that there's always something you can do to get the result you want.
Man, I love it. Hey, let's start with your book. You wrote a book on this topic.
I did.
Why? Tell us about it.
Well, accountability has always been something that's been near and dear to my heart, and I, through my personal life, have learned that if you want to accomplish something of significance, that you need to have a highly accountable mindset, that nothing comes to anyone easy. And if you're going to accomplish anything meaningful, anything important, anything that you truly want to achieve with your life, personally or professionally, you need to have a very high level of personal accountability. And the word accountability means a lot of different things to different people. People define it different ways. But in my mind, a person with high levels of accountability maintains, in its simplest terms, Thor, a mindset of what else can I do to get the result that I want. That's the simplest definition of accountability and kind of the mindset people adhere to and cling to. And if you think about people you may know in your personal life, maybe people you've interviewed, people you know in your professional career, those that consistently achieve and exceed the results they want, they're always focused on what else they can do to get the result they want, and they don't allow themselves to drop what I call below the water, drowning in the blame game, blaming other people, other things, or events as to why they can't achieve what they truly want.
Yeah, you know what's crazy too, and I don't know if you see this in your practice as well, but some of my best clients on the accountability side are people that are making 7 figures. Yeah, they're making $1 million a year, and they still want to be held accountable. And then you run into somebody that's just trying to, just getting by. And they're like, I don't know what's wrong. I need some accountability. Okay, great. You could do this. Well, I don't know if I really, want to spend the time doing that. It's like, it's crazy. The ones that are really doing well understand it. And so often the ones that need it the most don't appreciate it.
That's a great point. It brings to mind a couple of quick thoughts. First, often the notion of accountability, and the reason, as you just alluded to, that many people might not want to take accountability is because it's going to require most often some action. they're going to need to change their behavior. And most people, when you look at the entire definition and the best practices around accountability and what it truly means, it requires people to do things differently. And so many people are just comfortable with their current situation and don't necessarily want to change their behavior. The other thing I'll share with you, Thor, that's kind of interesting, and I call it the accountability conundrum. It's kind of a paradox when it comes to accountability. When I work with organizations around the world and leaders at every level, prior to coming in and helping them cultivate cultures of accountability to help their organizations achieve what's most important, I often do interviews up front to learn about their culture, what works well, what can work more effectively. And I just want to be very comfortable with their organization before I come in and do work with that particular firm. In those phone interviews, one of the questions I ask everybody that I speak with is, are you an accountable person? And Thor, I've probably asked that question 20,000 times in my career. Let me ask you, how do you think most people answer that question? Are you an accountable person?
Sure.
I have never, ever had anybody answer by saying, no, I am not accountable. Everybody answers by saying, yes, I'm accountable. I'm highly accountable. I love accountability.
Oh, okay.
And then the follow-up question that I ask is, Thor, do you need more accountability in your organization?
No.
And how do you think most people answer that?
No.
Well, actually, it's the opposite. They answer,
really?
yes, we need more.
Oh, okay, good. All right.
Do you see the paradox there?
Yes.
If everybody personally views themselves as highly accountable, why would any organization ever need more?
Right.
And the reason is, the way we're wired as human beings, we tend to externalize change. In other words, we believe we're doing great, and as long as everybody else, or when everybody else gets their act together, we'll be wonderful. And it's not just with accountability, it applies to just about any type of change. Everybody tends to believe they're doing great, and they're just looking for everybody else to change, and then we'll be fine. The problem with that mindset and that notion is that if you're waiting for other people to change, you're going to be waiting a long time. People will change when they see the change in you, especially as a leader. You need to be, it's the old Gandhi quote, you need to be the change you wish to see in others.
Mike, in your book, you talk about accelerating change. How do you do that?
Well, there's a few keys as to why change efforts typically do not achieve the result that leaders want to realize. I had the fortunate pleasure and privilege to work alongside one of the quote-unquote gurus when it comes to the topic of change, Dr. John Kotter. What he identified after 30 years of researching large-scale transformational change efforts is there's a couple reasons as to why they stall or produce mediocre results or fail completely. The main reason is there's often a high degree of complacency. In other words, people are comfortable with the status quo. There's not enough ownership, passion, or as John likes to call it, urgency to move toward a new outcome or a new direction that a leader may be wanting to take an organization toward. And there's a lot of reasons why those efforts fail. One is there's often too much of a focus on managing change versus leading change. Management, and by the way, we would say that change management is actually kind of an oxymoron, because management is about the known, what we know. You tend to manage things. The root word of manage is manos, which is handling things. So management is about the here and now, what we know. When we look at change, it's often about the unknown. And that's where you need a high dose of leadership. Leadership is what can really help connect to the head, not only the head and the logic, and create understanding among those you're leading, but it also connects to the heart. When we can lead people and create the vision of what success might look like, what's in it for them, how will this change make their life better, how will it make their job easier, how will it help their team, their department, how will it help their family. When people can make that connection, when they can see that themselves and draw their own conclusion and not be told to change, but actually discover for themselves, draw their own conclusion that, yes, this is the right thing to do, then you will have higher levels of ownership, alignment, and accountability, where people will voluntarily tap into what I call their discretionary performance area, and they will go above and beyond what's required because they can see themselves in a better place in the future. And that takes a high dose of leadership, creating that vision, motivating people, creating a clear picture of that future. And when people can see themselves in that future, it's very difficult to act inconsistently with how we picture ourselves.
Yeah, so well said. I refer to that as compelling future, that vision for whatever you're trying to accomplish. And what's really interesting is fear and pain will move us off of where we are. And then when we get far enough away from that fear or that pain, we tend to just kind of stagnate right in the middle. We've got to have something that we're kind of drawn to, that's drawing us in, that vision. And when you can get people to tap into that, that's when there's exponential change.
I could not agree more. In fact, when any change effort is introduced, often people, and it's in the book, there's an entire chapter devoted to change efforts and where people within your organization on a bell-shaped curve fall into. And oftentimes during times of change, there is a large majority of your population, your employees, that exist in what I call a fear or pain state of mind. And so we need to learn as leaders, what do we need to do to move people from this mindset of fear or pain and move them toward a position where they're highly engaged and see that by becoming part of the change effort and contributing, it is going to make their situation better, personally and professionally.
Yeah, I had an interesting interview a couple months ago with Price Pritchett III, and he's a big M&A guy, is involved in most of the pharmaceutical M&A deals worldwide. And he said in the last 30 years he's been doing this, he basically chunks it into three groups. You've got 25% that are going to resist the change, 50% that really just aren't quite sure yet, and then 25% that whatever you say, they love it. They didn't like where they were, and they love the fact that we're moving somewhere else. And he said as managers and leaders, so often we spend all the time with the people on the bottom 25% that are bitching and moaning about it, and we forget about the middle group. And it's easier to move the middle group towards the change and get on board. Very often the 25% are not going to move, not going to change, and actually end up leaving the company at some point. But we tend to gravitate towards the people that are moaning the biggest.
Yeah, it's interesting, Thor, that you bring that up, because what I've found, we call that moving the middle. And if you look at that standard bell-shaped curve of 20%, 60%, 20%, we have found the same thing to be true. You have 20% in any team, department, business function, or organization. So on a macro level or a micro level, you have about 20% that we would call models. You can rely on those people to help you achieve what matters most. You have about 60% who are kind of on the fence. We call those the maybes. And then we have the 20% that I refer to as the nevers. And these are the people that will never, ever, 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 ever help you achieve anything important. These are the people that come to work with an entitlement mindset. These are the people that are cynical, bitter, negative. They want to be paid just because they showed up. And what the problem I have seen, and the mistake some managers and leaders make, is trying to convert the nevers. And my recommendation to those folks is do not waste a brain cell on that group, because they will never, ever change. In fact, Gallup did some research not long ago, and they put the number at 19%. On average, I say it's 20, but Gallup says 19% of your employee base, whether it's a team of 10, a team of 1,000, or 10,000, 19% they call poison to your organization. And in the article that I read from Gallup, they went on to elaborate that you would be better off paying those people not to come to work. That's how much damage they do to your culture. And by attempting to spend time as a manager, supervisor, or leader to sway the nevers to become maybes or models is a horrible experience to create for those within your organization that are trying to help you achieve what matters most. when your folks that are models or those that are on the fence see a leader attempting to appease or spend time with the nevers, it sends a bad message to those that are already helping you.
Yeah.
And it can potentially move some of your top players into the maybe category or even draw them toward the never end of that bell-shaped curve. So all of the opportunity, all of your leverage is with focusing on the maybes in the middle of that bell-shaped curve. And if you can move that curve just 5 degrees to the right and get that portion of your maybes to become models within your organization, it has exponential impact within an organization in accelerating change and helping any organizational leader achieve what matters most.
Yeah, and you can lose your models as well. They'll just leave the company and say, that's it.
Hey, by the way, you know as well as I do that those that live and reside in that never category, they are actively recruiting those on the fence to come to the dark side. Come join us on the dark side. But as you mentioned earlier, if we focus as leaders on the maybes, those in the middle of the bell-shaped curve, those in the never category, they often will get the message at some point. They'll either self-select out or realize that they better get on board. But do not, as a manager, supervisor, or leader, don't waste any time or a brain cell trying to convert the nevers. Focus on the maybes and make sure that you're taking care of your models.
Yeah, and people like certainty. So the ones in the middle very often are just sitting there saying, okay, you said you were going to do this. This was going to be better. Show me. Don't tell me. You told me. Show me. And once you start showing them, very often they'll follow in line.
Absolutely. Showing is extremely critical. Words are cheap. You know as well as I do that words are cheap. Leaders need to understand, and most do. Most leaders and exemplary managers and supervisors understand that words are cheap. People will tolerate what we have to say as a leader, but ultimately they will act on what they see us do and the results that we create. People are waiting and watching. Words are cheap. In fact, if you think about the channels of communication, 7% of our communication are the words we speak. The other 93%, it's all about body language, tonality, and the results and the experiences that we're creating. People are looking for that. So as a leader, make sure that your actions are consistent with the words you speak. Leadership is all about the congruency between what you say and what you do. And as a leader, if you act inconsistently with your words, it is a horrible experience to create for those watching you, and it's almost impossible to recover from that.
Absolutely. I came up with kind of an analogy on this very topic, and I labeled it, who's in your boat? And if you ever have been in a rowboat and you've been rowing, let's say there's multiple positions for the rowers. You have some people that are sitting there rowing along with you. You've got other people just kind of standing in the boat not doing anything. And then there's this rope at the end of the boat. You don't even know what's going on, but if you were able to look under the water, you could actually see there was an anchor down there. And then you had one of your employees actually holding onto the anchor, just trying to slow the boat down. You didn't even know he was there. And you've got to figure out how to get rid of that, that anchor. Give them a chance to get on board, but it's like you got 5 minutes. I'm lighting the rope on fire. You got 5 minutes to get on board with us. And what also happens, which is interesting, is some of the rowers that you think are helping you row are dragging their oars. And if you've ever been in a boat like this, it's really frustrating. You're going along, and as somebody just drops an oar in the water, it just screws up the entire vessel. So I always think back to that kind of little, I picture a cartoon, and I'm always asking myself within an organization, okay, who's really doing the work here? So who's just standing by? And then where are my people that are undermining the efforts?
Yeah, I love the picture that you create there with the boat in the water, because when it coming back to accountability, when we have people that are highly accountable, engaged with that mindset of what else can we do, I kind of see them as an engine on a boat that's propelling an organization forward toward the results that you want to achieve. And as you just explained, you may also, and most organizations do, have a percentage and employees within an organization that are almost play out as an anchor within your organization impeding progress, slowing you down. And sometimes it's difficult as a leader, manager, or supervisor to pinpoint who those folks are, because oftentimes within an organization, as a leader or manager, you see a lot of people shaking their heads saying, yes, boss, that's a great idea. I believe that's the direction we should go. But we neglect to see that those same people are not taking action or being involved in any way to help us achieve what matters most. A lot of people in corporate America are shaking their heads, yes, 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 but leaders and managers fail to see that those same people may not be involved to the extent we need them to be in order to accelerate change or help us achieve what matters. There's a lot of people that like to kind of drop, as I've mentioned earlier, the terminology below the water, playing the blame game. And they have this mindset of, hey, it's not my fault and there's nothing I can do about it. And they tend to blame other people or other things as to why they can't accomplish anything important. The people and folks that have a high degree of personal accountability don't ever let any barrier, obstacle, or challenge deter them or slow them down from achieving what matters most, even if somebody else dropped the ball or some event caused them to be in a difficult situation. Highly accountable people always maintain a mindset of, okay, here's what I've got to deal with. What else can I do to get the result I want? They don't give up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, it was interesting because I find so often C-level executives, entrepreneurs, they get into this mindset of, okay, we're not making the progress that we want to make. Let me just apply more pressure. Let me just apply more energy. Let me apply more people. Let me get more accountability. Let me apply more. And then very often it's not about applying more. It's about letting go of the brake, right? Or cutting the line with the anchor on it. That's when things really start to accelerate.
Yeah, I completely agree and concur with that. And one of the things I have found, and it's kind of a sore spot with me, is when I hear folks say or use the terminology, let's make them accountable. Well, I cringe when I hear that, because you can't make anybody anything. Whether or not an individual decides to be accountable is a personal choice. You can't make anybody anything, whether it's accountability or any other behavior you want to see them exhibit. It's always an individual's choice as to whether or not they will display that. So when I hear that any leader, manager, or supervisor say, let's make them accountable, I cringe. I mean, you can certainly absolutely hold people accountable in a positive, principled manner, but you can't make anybody anything. It's the one thing every individual has complete and total control over, are the decisions we make about the choices we decide to take. Nobody can make anybody anything.
Thank you so much for listening today. I really do appreciate your time, and I hope you found today's show valuable. If you would like to receive these shows automatically to your phone or to your computer, simply go to iTunes and subscribe. After listening to several of the shows, if you're so inclined, please leave us a 5-star rating, as this helps us reach additional people and spread the message. If you're truly committed to taking your life to the next level and doing whatever it takes to become a peak performer, but something's holding you back, something is blocking your way, and you just can't seem to figure out what it is, send me an email to info@thorconklin.com, and I'd be more than happy to get on the phone with you. We'll schedule a 15-minute discovery call. No obligation, no cost. I absolutely love to hear from the listeners, and if there's something I can do to help, I'd be more than happy to do that. Also, if you found something of great interest in today's show and you want to share that with your friends and family, simply go to my Facebook page, Thor Conklin, click on the episode, hit the share button, and share it on your page. You can follow me at Twitter at Thor Conklin. The website is thorconklin.com. We're constantly adding new free resources, discussing additional tricks, tips, tools, and strategies on how to be a peak performer. Remember, I try to keep these episodes short so you can listen to them during dot time, doing other things, commuting, driving, walking, working out. Decide to be a peak performer in all that you do. And until tomorrow, have an absolutely amazing day.
Check back in for part 2 of our conversation with Mike, where he tells us the 3 M's of accountability, in addition to his secret for creating crystal clear expectations in the workplace. We look forward to seeing you again on another episode of Peak Performers Podcast.